So I call April of 2023 the month of rebirth, and that is because of what this Aries energy represents. So Aries starts the springtime, and the spring signs are Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. And as we move through these signs, these are very personalizing signs. You could say these are the personal signs which really develop an understanding of what the self needs in order to grow and to become an identity, a separate individual in this life. So Aries is the fire sign, which is about the identity principle. It's about bringing something to life, sparking a new idea or a new identity. And this new energy is symbolized by the glyph of Aries, which sort of looks like sprouting grass, two grass blades, or it looks like a fountain. And we also know Aries rules the head and the face. So the glyph of Aries also does look like a nose and a brow. And so this energy is about springing to life, and that's what we see occur in nature around this time of the year. The second sign of spring is Taurus, and this is an energy which is very stable, and it's about concentrating and receiving these energies. That's why the glyph of Taurus has this crescent at the top and then a circle on the bottom, and this is about receiving life energies into the circle, which represents the spirit. Then Gemini is the sign which adapts these energies because it's a mutable sign and it prepares them for the heat that is to come in summer. And Aries is, we're going to talk about Aries here today. Aries is the first sign, and it is a cardinal fire sign. So it's cardinal because it starts the spring, it starts the season, and it's a fire sign, which indicates that this is some of the most volatile energy in the zodiac. It's energy which initiates, because it's a cardinal sign, a new identity, because it's a fire sign. And this sign is on the first ray, which is the ray of will and power. And we're going to talk about the rays just to give you an idea of what the rays are. The rays are seen through the 7 color spectrum and also through the 7 notes on the chromatic scale. And the first ray is the ray of will and power. And it just has to do with showing that this sign is about the spark of consciousness. It's about a dawning of a new realization about who you are. And it's about bringing that true identity to light. So Mars is the ruler. We understand more about this sign through what is called in astrology the essential dignities. So what planet rules this sign, what planets are comfortable in the sign, what planets are uncomfortable. So Mars is the ruler. That means this is the home of Mars. And Mars is very comfortable in this energy. Mars rules this energy of Aries. And Mars is the red god of war. It's a planet of action and initiation and starting new things. It's a sign, it's a planet of aggression and war, and so it's that energy within us which propels us forward. The sun is exalted here in Aries, and that's very symbolical of a spiritual principle because the sun is the heart, right? The sun's the heart, and it's this light of consciousness. And the fact that it is exalted in Aries shows that when the light of the heart reaches the brain, that's when we have this exaltation of the solar power. So the heart, or the pure energy of consciousness within the heart, is meant to be expressed and used at the head level. So the sun is exalted in Aries, which means the sun does really well in Aries. So we can think of the ruler Mars as that's Mars's home, and we can think of a planet that's exalted as being a special guest in that sign. So the sun is a special guest. Venus is in detriment, which means Venus doesn't do very well here. And the reason Venus is in detriment in this sign is because Aries is a sign opposite the sign that Venus rules, which is Libra. And Venus rules a second sign, which is Taurus. So Venus doesn't do very well here. Saturn is also at fall in the sign, which means Saturn doesn't do very well. The reason Saturn is at fall is because Saturn's exalted in Libra. So this symbolizes the fact that Venus, which is our instinct for love and for being sociable, does not do so well in this energy of Aries. Aries is more concerned with the self and with taking action that is good for the self and in alignment with the self's desires. And it's not so much a sign of taking into account how the other person feels about it. That's more of Libra's domain, the opposite sign. Saturn is also at fall here, which shows that this is a very hard energy to stabilize and to discipline. Within all of us is this creative fire which wants to rush out into the world, and it's very eager, especially as we are young, in our youth is really where this energy manifests. And that's why Aries does rule over youthful energy, being young. It's sort of like the pure ego consciousness, which we see in the infant, which is just when the infant doesn't get its way, it starts crying and screaming until it gets what it needs. And this is really the dynamic energy of Aries. So in esoteric astrology, Aries is the spark of consciousness, a powerful and dynamic energy used by the soul to enlighten humanity through initiations, new beginnings, and progress in all dimensions of life. Esoteric astrology differs from traditional astrology in that it focuses on the spiritual evolution of the individual, seeing the personality traits as secondary manifestations which have their cause in the soul within. So Aries is about progress. It's about pushing humanity forward in our evolution. And we can really use this time in a powerful way if we'll see how we can push ourselves forward and see how we're holding ourselves back. What is really going to be revealed around this time is the ways that we are limiting our own self and holding ourselves back from the progress that our heart knows we need to make, that we're here to make. So this path, the ecliptic path, is the apparent path of the sun as it makes its journey through the year. And when it reaches this high point here, the upper part of the wave, this is where we come into spring and summer. And then it falls down, and that's when we have fall. And then in its southernmost point, that is winter for all the regions north of the equator, right? So just another reminder of how this seasonal energy in the zodiac works. We come through Aries and then Taurus and then Gemini, and that is all of spring. Then we come into the summer solstice, which is the peak of the sun's light. It's also the peak of the length of day. This is when the days are the longest. And then from summer, it gradually goes down, and we go through Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and then boom, we hit the autumn equinox, right? So then from autumn, we have Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and then we have the winter solstice, which begins with Capricorn, it culminates with Aquarius, and then it ends with Pisces. And then we do this whole yearly dance again, and it just keeps repeating. So this is a circle, right? The circle of the year, but it's also a spiral is really the way to look at it. It is a spiral, a journey of the sun. And the spiral can also be seen as a wave, just as we see this wave here. So we're currently here in the rising of spring, and the growing energy of these signs, which are here to personalize. The day force is a personalizing energy. It builds individualities. And that's really what we see happen with these first 6 signs. This is about establishing an identity in Aries, stabilizing it with your resources in Taurus, creating an understanding and knowledge so that you can interact with your environment well in Gemini. In Cancer, this is the creation of the family or the establishment of some sort of position in society, where you can be creative, and then the creativity is it manifests in Leo, which is about giving back. It's about creating and being adored and appreciated for what we create. And then in Virgo, we establish the need to really refine that creativity and be of practical service, right? So these are all these signs, these first 6 signs, are about building an individuality. It's really more self-centered energy, and it becomes a lot more social once we hit that fall point in Libra. And this is symbolic of going down into the underworld when we go to these last 6 signs, which is just about, the fall of consciousness away from the self and onto others. And these last 6 signs are still building the self. They're still helping to round out and create a conscious human identity, but it's a lot more geared towards understanding the collective and the society in which the individuality lives. So these cold signs are where we lose this heat of, really of the self. So in all mythologies, the upper realms are symbolized by, it represents consciousness, and the underworld represents the unconscious. I have a quote for you, and this is to sort of look at the old way of viewing the natural world, and, how we went from an animistic point of view to more of a vitalistic point of view, which we won't spend too much time on here, but it's more about, you'll see as we read these quotes here, but there's a specific part of this quote that I really want you to hear, because it backs up a lot of what I say about the renewal of the human spirit within and how we can be born again, as religion calls it, to have a second birth in our physical life, which is about a renewal of consciousness. It's a reorientation or a recentering of our conscious mind. And so check out this quote here. So the function of astrology was to bring into the chaos of the natural world on Earth the supreme order of which celestial revolutions are so conspicuous and so psychologically exalting in manifestation. Chaos and imprevisibility and blind chance on Earth, but above in the heavens, perfect order, previsibility, law. Astrology took its significance from such a contrast. The skies were regarded as a cosmic measuring device, an archetypal paragon of order, which could be juxtaposed with any system of natural phenomena. From this juxtaposition would result a new view of the system of natural phenomena, an ordered, coherent view, which would lead to the possibility of making prognostications as to the future behavior of the system. This is not very different from what science does when measuring with a yardstick or timing with a clock a natural phenomena. So this is a quote from Dane Rudhyar from his book, The Astrology of Personality, page 43 to 44. And what he's talking about here is that astrology is no different in its logic or in its use than mathematics or a yardstick. So a yardstick of itself has no meaning, it has no use until you use that yardstick to measure something. And in the same way, he's pointing out that this is the way it is with astrology. The fact that Mercury is retrograding is meaningless in and of itself. The meaning it has comes through its connection to what happens here on Earth. And then when we draw connections to the cycles, which are like perfect clockwork up in the heavens, just perfectly ordered and timed, and everything's always on schedule perfectly. Whereas down here on Earth, there's a bit of chaos. It's sort of a mess down here. And so the heavens are related to the things we see here on Earth, which seem to have no order behind it. But astrology reveals what the order is, especially the order of the soul, why we go through certain experiences when we go through them. Okay? And here's an amazing quote. This is the one which has something in it which I really want you to hear. And I've got it underlined here. But listen to this quote here. The creation of life by the sun is as continuous as his light. And again, so this is a quote from Hermes Trismegistus, which was quoted in The Secret Doctrine. And this was, again, pulled out of Dane Rudhyar's book, The Astrology of Personality, which I do recommend you pick up. The creation of life by the sun is as continuous as his light. Nothing arrests or limits it. Around him, like an array of satellites, are innumerable choirs of genii. These dwell in the neighborhood of the immortals, and thence watch over human things. All right, so let me throw in here who Hermes Trismegistus is. It's an ancient deity. Hermes is the god of thought. He also goes by the name Thoth, or Toth, or Toth. And, it's a god of thought. It's the god of the mind. And Hermes is Mercury, the planet Mercury. So this was an ancient Egyptian deity which was said to teach human beings things like, I believe, language and how to write, and imparted a lot of knowledge to humanity. So to go on here, they fulfill the genii, which he's saying are the beings that are like an army of satellites and are innumerable, that dwell around the sun. Okay? And they watch over human things. They fulfill the will of the gods by means of storms, tempests, transitions of fire, and earthquakes. Likewise, by famine and wars for the punishment of impiety. Under the sun's orders is the choir of genii, or rather the choirs, for they are many and diverse, and their number corresponds to that of the stars. Every star has its genii, good or evil by nature, or rather by their operation, for operation is the essence of the genii. They change perpetually, not always identically, but evolving in circles. They permeate by the body two parts of the soul, that it may receive from each the impress of his own energy. But the reasonable part of the soul is not subject to the genie. It is designed for the reception of God, who enlightens it with a sunny ray. Those who are thus illumined are few in number, and from them the genii abstain. For neither genie nor gods have any power in the presence of a single ray of God. But all other men, both soul and body, are directed by genii, to whom they cleave and whose operations they affect. So why am I sharing this quote? Because I think it's really interesting to look at the archaic worldview, the ancient view of looking at nature as being governed by what they call here genii, which are beings that operate in and through nature, and their very existence is to allow the operations in nature, both outside of us and in our bodies, to occur. But there's a very special sentence here from Hermes Trismegistus, which is that there is a part of the soul, the reasonable part, which is not subject to these beings, these operations in nature. It is designed for the reception of God, who enlightens it with a sunny ray. And when you've been enlightened by this single ray of God, you're not touched by these things anymore. I think this is really interesting, because what I tend to focus a lot on is how do we access that part of our soul, which is our truest part. It's the center of our heart, and it's the core of who we are. And the core of who you are is the I am presence, which is Aries. Okay, the I am within. At least that's what Aries represents, right? This consciousness, which is the spark of the I am presence. Okay, so that's where we're at here in this year with the sun in Aries. And here's another amazing quote, which I really wanted to share with you because I think it's amazing. No one needs to care for the course of Saturn. It neither shortens nor lengthens the life of anybody. If Mars is ferocious, it does not follow that Nero was his child. And although Mars and Nero may both have had the same qualities, they did not take them from each other. It is an old saying that a wise man may rule the stars, and I believe in that saying, not in the sense in which you take it, but in my own. For the stars force nothing into us that we are not willing to take. They incline in us to nothing which we do not desire. They are free for themselves, and we are free for ourselves. You believe that one man is more powerful in the acquirement of knowledge, another in the acquisition of power, and you think that this is caused by the stars, but I believe the cause to be that one man is more apt than another to acquire and to hold certain things, and that this aptitude comes from the spirit. It is absurd to believe that the stars can make a man. Whatever the stars can do, we can do ourselves, because the wisdom which we obtain from God overpowers the heavens and rules over the stars. Man's soul is made up of the same elements as the stars, but as the wisdom of the Supreme guides the motions of the stars, so the reason of man rules the influences which rotate and circulate in his soul. Okay, and so this is from Paracelsus, who was an astrologer and a healer, and I think he was even the first to create pharmaceuticals. He was the first one to create medicine, right, in the form of very concentrated herbs and whatnot like this. So he was an alchemist, an astrologer, and it's interesting his quote here, because we seem to have, especially in our modern world, we seem to have gotten kind of off this track of understanding that the stars don't force us to do anything that we're not willing to take, that we're not willing to do, okay? And it's interesting here, he also describes that the wisdom we obtain from God, from the source, overpowers the heavens and rules the stars, okay? And our soul is made up of the same elements as the stars, but just as this wisdom, this intangible spirit, guides the motions of the stars, it also rules all the influences which rotate within us, which circulate inside of us. Okay, so the goal here is to, as we learn astrology, we realize that the goal really is to learn how to tap into our source, which is God. And that's really the whole thing about life. So how do we access our soul? How do we become free? How do we tap into the source of our being? Marcus Aurelius, from his old book, Meditations, has a really good quote, which is relevant to this, which is, "Revere the faculty that produces opinion. This faculty determines whether there shall exist in your ruling part any opinion inconsistent with nature and the constitution of the rational animal. And this faculty promises freedom from hasty judgment, friendship toward men, and obedience to the gods. This faculty promises freedom from these things, from hasty judgment, and it promises friendship towards all people and obedience to the gods. Okay, so revere that faculty that produces opinion. What does that mean? That means have a respect for that thing within you, which is the source of your opinions, which is the opinion maker. Okay? Because you can make any opinion you want in the world. That's in your power. That's in your free will. Right? And then the opinions you have will affect you, whether they are consistent or inconsistent with nature, with the nature of this universe, and with the constitution of a rational animal, which is what we are. We're animals with a rational sense of, we can self-reflect, we can understand things. And so that would be our spirit. So our spirit is the faculty that gives us life. It enlivens our minds. It makes everything work for us. And then we determine through the power of that spirit how we're going to qualify that energy, what sorts of opinions we'll have. So to access our soul, to become free, number one, we have to evaluate our opinions. We have to evaluate the things that give us tension from within. What produces tension in your body? And a lot of our tensions tend to come from things like resentments and judgments of others. And so all these things have to do, the reason they'll make us suffer or not suffer is because it has to do with our alignment with our spirit, which is perfect love. So what I found is that we've got to forgive. We have to forgive our fellow human beings for what they do. We have to protect ourselves from them, have strong boundaries, and, everybody's accountable for what they do. But internally, we have to find a way to create opinions that are not going to be inconsistent with nature, that are not going to harm us. And a lot of these things have to do with our judgments of fellow human beings. Because like when we looked at the zodiac, right, the first half is about developing our self-consciousness. The other half is about developing consciousness of the self in relation to the other. So there's a big part of our dynamic in our psyche, which has to do with being in harmony with other people. Not outwardly, not acting nice. I mean internally, being internally in harmony with all human beings. And the only way we have the ability to do that, the power in which we can do that, depends upon our judgments that we form and our opinions that we have about the people around us. So I want to just give you guys a little message here, just a little spicy message, which I think may help, which is, this is so an opinion that I formed. This has helped me, right? Just take it or leave it. If it resonates, you could take it. If it doesn't resonate, just leave it. But one thing that has worked for me immensely is to create the opinion or the belief or the understanding, for me, it's true, which is that all human beings are doing the best they can do, and humans can't help themselves. And I see that this is true about me. I really can't help myself. Well, who I need is God. God helps me. God helps me see myself, helps me expand, helps me get enlightened. So just real quick here. All people are all doing the best they can do because the best is the best. They can't do better than the best because better, you have good, and then you have better, and then you have best, right? So you can't get more than that. And everybody's doing their best. Yes, we could all do better. Yeah. But not in the moment. In the moment, that's our best. This is the best I can do right now. And I know that tomorrow I may get even better, but that will be my best then. And so I realized that about human beings. So it causes me to forgive other human beings, and that keeps me in perfect harmony with myself because I'm in perfect harmony with all others. Yes, people could hurt me. They could say whatever they want. But at the end of the day, I realize that it has to do with them. I can take feedback. I can reflect on what I hear from other people. But if it hurts me internally, I have to submit to that. I have to allow them to harm me because I would have to have an opinion that their opinion matters when it doesn't. Everybody's allowed to judge, right? So I let people judge me and I don't get mad about it. I don't say, don't judge me. I just forgive others. So that's a really powerful way you can access your soul because your soul has no judgments in it. It's the judgment-making faculty. Does this make sense, guys? So you can tap into the true source of love by overcoming all judgments. Just think about this. Just chew on that, okay? So we got the vernal equinox here. We are here in the seasons, okay? The sun is climbing its ascent, all right? The days are getting longer and hotter, and I'm happy about it. All right, before we get into the transits and I cover how the Mercury retrograde and the new moon solar eclipse is going to affect all signs, and we'll get into the charts, just a few more things I want to share here with you. So we've been talking about Pluto a lot since it's come into Aquarius, and this is a model of consciousness. And I got this model from an amazing book called The Hades Moon. The Hades Moon. Make sure to get that book, especially if you are a mother or a daughter. I think you'll really enjoy this book, especially if you like astrology. But anybody who's into astrology should get this book. It ties together the reality that astrology and myth and the ancient symbols that we get from ancient myths all have to do with explaining and uncovering and revealing the different aspects of our psyche. So myth is carried down through history. You know, if you understand Joseph Campbell's work, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, we are all that hero. And there's a hero which has 1,000 different faces. It's the hero portrayed throughout all the mythologies, and it's us. It's the journey of the self and the self-realization. Okay, so in this model, we've got the left brain and the right brain. All right, this is everyday awareness, the conscious self. Higher than that is this higher consciousness, which is pretty hard to access because it goes beyond duality, right? There's no left brain and right brain here in the higher consciousness. But here in the center is the self, and then below the everyday awareness is the personal unconscious. Okay, and then where we go when we dream is we access the collective unconscious when we sleep. All right, so the collective unconscious is a living thing. It's not dead. It is a living energy, and it speaks to us through dreams, symbols, allegories, signs. It speaks to us in this way, right? And it's helping us to integrate, to become whole. But this is Pluto's realm. This is the realm that Pluto governs, which is why when we discovered Pluto, that was at the same time we had the invention of the atomic bomb, and that was also when some crazy genocide was happening. And this is what Pluto is about. It's about revealing the deep monsters that we've tried to hide and keep away in the closet. But the more we hide them, the more powerful they get. They become more powerful, and then they flood through. And then we have to deal with all the things that we have repressed. So a lot of our darkness that was repressed reveals itself through the operation of Pluto, okay? So Pluto now in Aquarius is going to help us become more aware, and it's going to transform us through the Aquarian ideals now that Pluto's in Aquarius. So there's a lot to talk about with that, but this is just to help you understand a little bit about how Pluto operates and what it means, okay? So each planet and sign is not only literally connected with an Olympian god or deity, but with an archetypal psychodynamic force. They are part of the world of the universe and must be part of us. Everything you see is in your consciousness. That means it's a part of you. So I am a part of you. That's the only way you can see me. You could only see somebody if they were a part of you. So to reject anything you see is to reject a part of you. This to me is very important when it comes to understanding how to become whole. Because whatever you don't accept within yourself, it already exists, so how can you not accept it? Just think about that. Can you accept the unacceptable? And even if you don't accept it, it's still there, right? So why don't we just accept it? Acknowledge that it's there. Our darkness, our ugliness, all the things we wish weren't there. Why don't we acknowledge it and include it? Because that's what love would do. And then we can overcome it more easily. We can, through integrating it, right? Here's a quote from Judy Hall from the Hades Moon. Pluto as a god is the dark man who haunts our dreams. This is interesting. I love this. He kills or he loves us, and both are the same. When Pluto was retrograding back over my sun, I dreamed of a dark man chasing me. He was slashing at me with a scorpionic scalpel. I awoke terrified and sick with fear, and yet saying to myself, at least you're feeling, at least you haven't shut down. Going back into the dream, I tried two approaches. In the first, I turned to face him and found myself armed with a machete with which I, without thought, cleaved him in two. Immediately, I felt a deep grief, as though something priceless had been lost. Rerunning the dream again, I allowed him to catch me. He split me from neck to crotch, but then reached in and brought out a child, which he handed to me. The dream propelled me back into writing this book, which had been on hold while other books came to birth. So this is the fruitful darkness that we tend to run away from because it's unknown, it's scary, it's dark. It's not how we want it to look. It's unpredictable, you know? It's outside of our comfort zone. It makes us feel shaky and we're scared of it. Why? Well, because it's scary, okay? But we can overcome our fear if we know that we are the light. And if we can trust that this scary part of our consciousness is trying to help us. It's trying to give birth to something creative within us. And the highest level, with Taurus and Scorpio, these two opposite signs, one's ruled by Venus, one is ruled by Pluto. Taurus is ruled by Venus, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, right? And also Mars. And Pluto is about piercing to the depths of the unconscious and releasing the deep creativity that is held within there. Venus and Taurus is about, oh, it's nice, let's stay on the surface, let's keep it nice and comfortable. And it's also about physical fertility. But Scorpio is about understanding that there is an energy at the base of the spine which we don't need to express purely in a sexual way. Fertility is not only physical. You can be creative emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, not just physically. And so this is really the lesson between these two signs, Taurus and Scorpio. All right? So something to remember. And I just want to remind everybody right now, don't be afraid. You have nothing to be afraid of except for fear itself. Fear is like the plague, okay? Fear is the real germ. It's the real plague that we need to avoid at all costs. And the only way you can avoid it is by loving it. Because perfect love casts out fear. God was telling the truth when he wrote that in the scriptures. Okay? So this is from Marcus Aurelius from Meditations. Is any man afraid of change? What can take place without change? What then is more pleasing or more suitable to the universal nature? Can you take a hot bath unless the wood for the fire undergoes a change? And can you be nourished unless the food undergoes a change? And can anything else that is useful be accomplished without change? Do you not see then that for yourself also to change is just the same and equally necessary for the universal nature? So change is death, right? Death is change. But in order to have rebirth, we need death. And so we can be born again many times in one physical life. So just as creativity and fertility is not merely physical, it can also be mental and spiritual. There's also a non-physical death that we have to allow to happen. We have to allow ourselves to go through it. There's a non-physical death and rebirth. You can go through many mental rebirths, emotional rebirths, but the most important one is a spiritual rebirth, which occurs when we forgive our fellow human beings and overcome our resentments. That concludes this presentation for April of 2023. I hope you got something out of it. You can use the links in the description to schedule a reading with me or to see the other things that I offer. And thanks for being here. I love you so much. Peace.